Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Exploring Photography right here on Adorama TV. I'm Mark Wallace, hanging out with Anabel. You've seen her before on some of our past episodes, and today we are going to continue learning about photography, specifically by talking about metering and where to point our light meter. Now you've probably seen me pointing the meter at the camera, and you've probably seen my good friend Gavin Hoey pointing it at the light. In fact, when we do things together, people ask us, where do you point the light meter? Is it at the camera or at the light? And the answer is, it depends. And it really depends on how the lighting setup is used and what you want to do. But to really understand how our light meter works and where to point our light meter, we need to understand this little dome thingy here, this little white thing on the front of our meter. It's called a Lumisphere. And to understand where to point our meter, we first need to understand what this thing is doing. So let's jump to that right now. Well, before Anabel joins us again, let's talk a little bit about this little white thing on our light meter. It's called a Lumisphere, and it's not just by accident that it is shaped like a half of a ball. It's a sphere, and so what it does is it's looking at 180 degrees and 360 degrees around this way. It's looking at all the light that's coming in to this sphere, and then it is taking all of that data from over here, over here, over here. It's taking all of that data and then is averaging everything. And that is going to give us a good reading if we're looking for things that are shadows and highlights and everything in our scene. And we can get that by pointing our Lumisphere to the camera. And so to really understand how that works, why we would want to point this to the camera and not the light, to get all of that information, I'm going to turn on this little LCD panel here, and I've got this little quick demo. So I'll turn this guy on. It's going to get a little bit bright. There we go. And now we can zoom in on this and look at it really, really closely. Now when we look at this really closely, you can see on this side, on the light side, we can see that the information here is really bright on this side of our Lumisphere. But on the other side, you can see that it is dark. And so it is taking the light stuff from this side and the dark from the other side where there is no light, and it's averaging all of that stuff together, and it's telling us what a proper value is to make sure that we have detail in the dark side and in the bright side. So we're preserving the shadows. So this would be what the equivalent of pointing our light meter toward our camera if we had a light to the side. Now, let's pretend we're going to point our light meter to the light. So when I tilt this, now notice we're only getting the values from the light. We're not getting any of the shadows from the other side. So that means that our light meter doesn't know about the shadows. It doesn't know how to average those things. And so what we're doing, essentially, is we're making sure we get a proper exposure from the light, but we're ignoring averaging the dark values. So we're preserving the highlights and ignoring the shadows. And so that really will help us understand if we should point our light meter to the camera or to the light. Because when we point our light meter to the camera, then the light meter is going to get the values of the light coming from the light. It's also going to get the values of the light that's coming from nowhere, in other words, the shadows. It's going to average that out. It'll preserve those shadows, but the highlights are going to be a little bit brighter. If we point our light meter to the light itself, well, it's not going to see those shadows, and so it's only going to tell us what to do to make sure that we have a proper exposure for the highlights. Now, the question is, what about this Lumisphere up or down? Well, when we put this back down here on the table, and so we have that where you can see this light coming across, you can see that because the Lumisphere is extended, we can see the values coming in from all different directions. In fact, if I put my hand to the side, you can see that it picks up the reflection of the light coming from my hand. If I take that away, it ignores that reflection. So it's really cool how that works. But what if we really want to make sure that we're only seeing the light from one specific source and ignoring everything else? Well, if we tell this guy to hide, then what we're seeing is we're just seeing the light that's hitting directly on top of our light meter and ignoring everything that's coming from the sides. And so that's what that is for. So it's saying, hey, I want to make sure only to see the light coming straight in, but ignore everything coming from the sides. If you want to make sure to see everything, you put your Lumisphere up. It's getting the bright side, it's getting the dark side, it's getting everything, so it can average all of those values. That little Lumisphere is really well designed, and it's really an amazing thing. Well, now that we know what this little guy is doing, what our Lumisphere is doing, we can start applying that to a very basic lighting setup. Now, for this setup, my camera would normally be right here, but leaving that there, well, I sort of block Anabel's face. So I'm going to move this to the side just so you can see what's going on back here, and then I'll bring the camera back out and take some photos. But what we need to do is learn how to decide. We're going to point this to the camera or to the light based on what we know about our little Lumisphere. So we have a very, very basic lighting setup. So let me just shoot a camera overhead so I can show you this. Our key light is this Profoto Softbox right here. This is the 3-foot Octa box. That's just going to be our main source of light. We're also bouncing some of that light off of this reflector that's opposite Anabel. So that's going to fill in some of the shadows on the other side of her face. And then we have a hair light, that big strip box in the back there. That's just adding a little bit of light to her hair to separate that from the gray background. This is a really simple lighting setup, but we're not so concerned with the light and the photos. More we're concerned about how this works and where we point our light meter. So think about this more than the photos that we're getting back here. We're going to start by only using our key light, our Profoto 3-foot Octa box. Now this could be any key light, it doesn't really matter. Remember, we're talking about where to point our light meter. That's what we're learning today, not a lighting setup. So we're going to start by zipping back here. And Anabel, if I can have this little remote. So now I have my little remote control. I can turn lights on and off. The first thing we want to do is only meter this key light. Now, I want to show you the difference between metering to the light and metering to the camera. You're basically standing, you're looking at me where the camera is going to be when I take the photos. So when I first meter this with the Lumisphere up, I'm going to get a reading. I'm going to point this at this light right here, and I'll hit this, and that is reading 4. So I'm getting F4 as my meter reading. Now, if I step back here, I'm going to point this to the camera. So I'm going to point this to the camera, take a reading, and now that's reading 3.4. That's a half stop difference. Now that doesn't seem significant, but it is, because what this is doing is when I'm pointing it to the key light only, it's just looking at this light and it's ignoring the shadows. Because of that, I'm going to make my aperture smaller, f4, which means that the shadows on this side of Anabel's face, if I didn't have a reflector or something kicking that in, those will be darker than the meter reading that I took when I pointed this to the camera. 3.4, the aperture is wider. So when I point my light to the camera, remember my Lumisphere is looking at this light, it's looking at the shadows, it's looking at the light bouncing from this reflector over here. It's averaging all of that, and my meter is smart enough to say, hey, when I'm looking this way and getting all these different values, I need a wider aperture to make sure that my shadows aren't too dark. I'm trying to preserve those shadows. When I'm only pointing this to the light this way, it doesn't see this reflector over here. It doesn't see these shadows, and so it ignores those. And so let's just take a look really fast. I'm going to take some photos and show you f4 versus f3.4, and you'll see that the shadows change slightly, and so do the highlights. Well, when we look at these images that I just shot, the differences aren't that significant. First, let's look at the image that I shot metering toward the light. That is preserving our highlights. Now when we meter toward the camera, it's only a half stop difference, so you can see that our shadows are a little bit more preserved. We see a little bit more detail in the shadows, but the highlights are a little bit hotter. It's not a huge difference in this setup because we have a really nice soft light, we have a really nice reflector bouncing a lot of light in, but in a more contrasty scenario, that difference would be much different. Well, in that lighting setup, everything works pretty well almost every single time, but what happens when we add more lights and our lighting setups get a little bit more complicated? That's where it gets to be specific. And so to show you this, I'm going to get rid of this reflector really fast, just so you can see what I'm doing back there with our hair light. And so I've got this strip light right here. You can see that. I'm going to turn that on. So let me grab this and this. All right, so I'm going to turn on this strip light right there. That's going to add a nice hair light. Now the question is, should we have our Lumisphere, this guy right here, should it be up or should it be down? Well, I'm going to prefer to put that down so that I'm only getting light that's coming directly in to our light meter, not all of the stuff that's bouncing around off the floor, etc. That way I can be really specific about what light I'm metering. So again, I'm going to put my Lumisphere down. I'm going to zip back here. This light is coming this way to Anabel's head. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it right where it's hitting her hair, and then I'm pointing this right directly at this light, and then I will get a meter reading. Now it's metering at f4, I've already set that up. That exactly matches what I'm getting from my key light. But the point here is, for this, we want to make sure that we're only metering the light that's coming from this light. We don't want to get anything that maybe would be bouncing off this reflector, coming off the floor, coming off the ceiling, etc. So Lumisphere down, right where the light is landing, point the meter right at the light, and take a reading. So now that we have that, let me just take a quick shot. I'll put the reflector back, and we'll show you how it looks. Let's review. Our Lumisphere, when it's up, it looks all around for all of the different light values, the shadows, the highlights from a single light or multiple sources, and averages that light to give us a proper value. So if you're metering for multiple sources, or if you want to make sure that you're including shadow values, make sure that the Lumisphere is up and you're pointing your light meter at your camera. If, however, you really only care about a single source of light, and that's all you care about, you don't care about those other values, then you point your light meter at your single source of light. If you have multiple lights and you want to look at the different values to make sure that those match, or look at ratios, then it's Lumisphere down, point the meter at each light source, and take those readings to make adjustments as necessary. But in the end, you're still going to have to meter to the key light to establish what your overall reading is. So in our instance here, we metered to f4, and then we dialed everything accordingly. That's why it's called a key light. Everything is based off of that key. And that is all there is to it. I know it seems complicated, but get into a studio and practice a little bit. Add one light, make it really contrasty, meter toward the camera, toward the light, and see for yourself what's going on. And then once you have that dialed in, add a second light, add a hair light, add multiple lights, add lights on the background, play with your light meter. Then you'll be able to see what's happening by just reading the numbers on your light meter, and it'll make a world of difference to your photography. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of Exploring Photography. Make sure you check out Anabel on Instagram. Her Instagram is
Anabel Dieguez Bailen.
All right, we put that right here. And I know in the past couple episodes that Anabel's been in, the Instagram link is incorrect because somebody changed it. It's her fault. But that's the correct one. And we've also included that in the description of this video. Also, make sure you check out my Instagram feed because I'm always posting behind the scenes footage and things that are happening when we're filming these episodes, and photo tips from past episodes. And I'm also taking your questions for ideas for new videos. So get over to Instagram, follow me, make sure that you're doing that so we can interact and have lots of fun. Also, make sure you subscribe to Adorama TV. It's totally free. I don't know why you're not doing it. And if you are, click on the bell so you get notifications. We don't want you to miss anything. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you again next time.